Good evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. I'm here with my UBI co-hosts, Diane Blackwell and Polly Spain, both active housing leaders in public housing here in Harlem and New York City, and very active advocates for universal basic income. This is our monthly show. And we have a special guest joining us, Diane Pagen from Brooklyn, New York. Diane is also an advocate, UBI. Before we came on, she was talking a little bit about the marches that she has participated in over the last couple of years. Maybe Diana, you'll give us a little bit of background about Diane and how she came onto the show.
Well, I'm going to be honest, I've just met Anne and I'm not very familiar with her. So I would like really for her to, and introduce herself and her work.
Okay, so Diane, maybe you'll tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. Oh.
Yeah, that's you, Diane.
Sure, there I am. Okay, I thought it sort of went out for a second. I couldn't hear Diana very well. Okay, so yeah, so I'm Diane and Pagen, and I'm a New Yorker. My background in UBI came, just very briefly, it came from my my time as a social worker. So I've been a social worker for about 16 years, and I've done that work in New York City. I've done it in upstate New York, and I got out of social work school around 2004, and my introduction to UBI came not in the curriculum of my social work program, which you would imagine it would, right? Because you're talking about social work and helping people and figuring out societal issues. So you would have thought, or you would have thunk that, people would be talking about money in social work school and how to get money to people. But actually my college experience was that in social work school, money was almost never talked about. And it seemed very bizarre to me, and because I was thinking about it and thinking about economics and stuff. And so I ended up, when I got out of social work school, or like while I was doing internships, I got introduced to a woman named Teresa Funicello. And Teresa had she had a group in the 80s called DWAC, and they were the Downtown Welfare Advocates Center, and they helped women on welfare. Basically, it was a membership organization, and they helped women on welfare to try to navigate the system and get some justice in it. And actually, they were able to, they were the only group in the history of New York State that ever got a welfare grant increase. Wow. Through street activism. So it was really amazing. And she wrote a book about her activism, and one of the chapters was about what she thought the solution to poverty was. And she theorized that that all you needed to do to wipe out poverty was to make sure that people had income, especially the people who are typically doing a lot of productive work but not getting paid, such as mothers and other caregivers. Mm-hmm. So I got into UBI through her, and it's been really great. I mean, there were many different iterations of my growth in the movement and my activism, but currently the recent history that is interesting to everyone here, I think, is that I was hosting from about 2015 to about 2019. I was hosting something called Basic Income NYC, And those were social gatherings downtown where we would get together and talk about UBI and recruit new people to learn about it and do some letter writing and stuff. It was mostly socializing amongst new recruits to the UBI movement. And sort of around 2019, early 2019, I believe it was, James Felton Keith contacted me, and we started to talk about what more we could do to make sure that, like, why work in silos, right? Like, why not collaborate more and get more people and introduce more communities to it? So we got, chit-chatting about that over beers and stuff. And then we decided one day to do an event instead of doing them in the place that I usually did these events was in Lower Manhattan. It was a very different vibe, it was the Wall Street area. And he suggested that we do collaborate and that I bring the event uptown. And we had a really successful event at 3333 Broadway in the buildings where my understanding was that the tenants were, fighting basically to keep their homes. There was an investor coming in and things like that. And so James suggested that our next event be, something a little bit more like in the street. And we decided that we would do a march. And so that's what we did. And in 2019, we had a march. And it was epic. It was great. There was about 800 people. It was, we had a lot of collaboration from great people. Wonderful people got involved who have really run with the ball on, multiplying the number of people that come to the marches. And it's just, it's a lot, but it's just been marvelous. It was a marvelous day. We marched from Convent Avenue to the Bronx, to Mott Haven. And, it was really the start. It was a catalyst and a start of something very, very special that has taken off in a really marvelous way. It's kind of been a catalyst for taking some of the people who have been part of the UBI movement for a very long time, but have been more academic, and it's encouraged them to move more into activism. And we're putting kind of the UBI community that was not very, you could say, was not very activist prior to, say, 2015, has become quite activist and quite coordinated. It's been wonderful. So that's sort of the short version.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. And I think, Diana, you were at that march that Diane just talked about in 2019, were you not?
I sure was. And like I said, I've just met Diane, and it was a great march. I am glad to know someone who actually orchestrated this. And I'm excited about the future because I understand they're working out something else, in the very near future.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Mm-hmm. And we've just been joined by Elijah, Coach Brooks. Welcome, Coach Brooks, to the broadcast.
Yes, welcome. Apologies. Just trying to secure a quiet space so I can listen to the broadcast.
Okay. Well, feel free to chime in whenever the mood hits you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, please. Okay, Diana, this is the first I've heard about what sounds like a formal organization, maybe, of UBI folks here in New York City. Am I hearing that right from what Diane's telling us?
Well, I don't think it's so much the first formal, but it is the first, I would say, openly and visual expression of what UBI are. They've actually had some meetings, a conference with some international and national people here, but it still was not so exposed as was the march.
Yes, that's true. I've been involved in UBI since about 2004, and like I said, Mrs. Funicello, who wrote the book I referred to, she started taking me to the U.S. Basic Income Guarantee Network congresses around that time, and they were, there's a lot of wonderful people, thinking great thoughts and trying to figure things out, but you wouldn't call the UBI community prior to, say, 2015 or so, you wouldn't call them very activist. A lot of it was kind of, there wasn't a lot of mainstream recognition of the movement, and that was in part just because the nature of the people involved was just more, they were coming from an academic world, but a lot changed for the movement. And it really predates. It really predates, even though a lot of people say, well, that mainstream awareness happened probably with Andrew Yang, and that is true. I mean, Andrew did a lot to create awareness nationally about UBI. It's also true, though, that the movement was ready for that promo. The movement was already like going into communities. There were people in Minnesota asking the city council to meet with them. I know some of the people in Minnesota that were working on this. They were doing that in 2015, 2016, 2017. There were people in California in 2017 meeting with their Congress members. There was some media coverage, more in the theoretical realm. And there was a lot going on, and it was really ready for a catalyst. And I think that Andrew Yang became the kind of the voice of this movement that was ready for its prime time, so to speak. And so there was a lot going on. We had our group in New York City, and but there were small groups all over the country, and Washington, and they didn't have any money. I mean, we didn't have any money, and we weren't organized. So one wonderful thing that I want to say before I forget to say it is that when we had the Basic Income March in 2019, as probably all of you have had this experience, with your work, when you're doing something really that people want to be part of, it's really, you just find people suddenly just start showing up who can do the things that maybe you can't personally do yourself, but you have some talents, and then new people show up and they're like, what you're doing is great, I want to be part of it. And that's what's happened in my experience with the march, is that we were all looking for a way to really make noise, and that was the primary thing on my mind around 2017, 2018. And then suddenly I meet James, and James says, well, let's just do events outside then. And I said, okay, well, maybe we could go to, Fort Tryon Park, or we could go to Morningside, and we can hand out stuff. And he's like, no, let's do a march. And I'm like, James, isn't that a lot of work? And he goes, nah, it's no work. we have marches all the time up here. And anyway, long story short, it was a shit ton of work. But it's probably good that I didn't really, know that at the moment that we were starting, and people just came out of the woodwork, great people, including people that we had gotten involved with, who at the end of the first march, they were instrumental in duplicating the march. Originally, James and I were seeing this as a march that would just be in New York City. And we met two people, actually three people. We met Giselle Huff, Stacy Rutland, and Dylan Enright. And Stacy and Dylan had the knowledge and ability to basically create the tools, the online tools, to help us promote and replicate and help people replicate the march anywhere they wanted to. And so as a result of their collaboration, it became a multi-city event, whereas, that is definitely something that we had never imagined would happen. And the other wonderful thing that happened was there were hundreds of people in the UBI movement who had never done any activism around UBI. They were writing papers. They were academics, professors, researchers. They all came to the march. They all showed up for the march. They held signs, they marched. These are people who have been active in the movement or a wealth of information, but had never been activists. So they got a taste of, being in the community, and, you can't undo that. It was thrilling for everyone. And so now there's a group, so Stacy and Dylan founded something called Income Movement at the end of the march to keep, to be able to have a national group that could do, year-round planning for the march, plus other activism. And Income Movement is amazing. And Stacy is she is the person that can, keep all of these balls in the air. And, because of Income Movement, we were able to have I think we had a 44 city event in 2020 during a pandemic.
Wow.
We had a great New York event, which I organized primarily with the help of a lot of great people. And now we're going to have in 2021, we're going to have an event, and we have a lot of partner organizations now. God willing, we'll have more, through the opportunity that, you're giving me to talk about it and to meet all of you. God willing, we can have more people from Harlem, from different communities that could benefit from sustained recurring income.
Do you have a date for the 2021 event yet, Diane?
Yes. So save the date, September 25th. It's a Saturday.
Okay.
We location is to be announced. And we're really excited because we have, we're already in the planning stages of it. And people who want to, if you're even, I guess one thing that I want to say about it is that some of our best events last year and in 2019 were not large events. You can have, I think that we had some people do an event in Orlando. It had maybe a few hundred people. Or in Orlando, Florida. We had people in Kansas, someplace in Kansas, very tiny place, that had maybe 50 people. But even an event with 20 people in a public place is an event that is well worth it, because by the end of the day, people are going to see you, you're going to talk to people, you're going to have an impact on their lives. And it's a community builder. So I just want to say, like, we are interested in providing the tools. Income Movement as an organization, one of the things it's doing is it's making sure that anyone that is listening to this, or that, you know, hears about it or goes to the website, anyone can decide wherever they are to do a basic income march event on September 25th, 2021. We will help you to plan. We're very adamant that people not pay out of pocket for any promo materials, for any signs, for tape, for widgets, for banners. We do all of that. We also provide the design if people want it. And we provide, you know, collaboration and support through Zoom meetings that happen twice a week from now until the March.
What is your website, Diane? Can you give that now before I forget to ask?
Yeah, so the website for Income Movement is incomemovement.com. Income Movement also has an additional website. It's called bailoutthepeople.com. And at bailoutthepeople.com, we have other things that people can do. Besides planning a march, there are other ways that you can get involved. So both of those websites, my recommendation is that people go right away to incomemovement.com, and you can click on the Basic Income March event, and, you know, you can get involved. And like I said, you know, I don't want anyone to get overwhelmed by the idea of planning an event. Even a small event is an event, and we'll help you make your small event the best it can possibly be. And you know, no stress. It's to have fun and to move the needle forward, so to speak. So yeah, so that would be the way to get started. And if you sign up for emails, you'll get the emails for the planning. We have these planning Zooms that people can go on and meet other people who are doing marches and ask questions and collaborate. It was a lot of fun, you know, both times. It's a good time.
So Diana, this sounds like something that we really should kind of be promoting in our communities, no?
I think it would be something that we could promote. I really am concerned about getting the word out about UBI. We have a radio program. It's been going on for 18 months plus. And I think we need to reach a larger audience, because we got to give them something to reach out for. And the march is great, but we need something else. And so, Diane, I'd like to kind of ask if there is any type of incentive, not so much, you know, material incentive, but something that would draw them to the march. What did you do in the past? And what could you offer us and educate us in doing just to get them just interested in it?
Well, so I think that people are waking up to the idea that that money is not something that the way that we distribute money at this time is it's seriously flawed. And I think that people are waking up and warming up to the idea that there's a better way to live, and what I would like to do is, you know, what I would promise people that got involved in the march would be that you're going to be part of something that is going to improve your life, not necessarily, you know, this isn't just altruism here. This is about this is about finally claiming, you know, a new way of assuring basic human dignity and solutions to these problems that they just keep getting recycled from generation to generation, and they never go away. And I think that people of all ages and of all circumstances are warming up to the idea that, you know, time is marching on, and we need, you know, no one's going to do it for you. No one is going to, you know, do a show of force for you. We need to get out there. And now that we have a lot of people on board, it's not a painful experience. Activism is, you know, I think that we can promise that activism for a basic income is not a painful experience, whereas it may have. Indeed, I wouldn't have been able to make that argument 15 years ago, you know, when you did activism for UBI and you got made fun of, and people asked, like, what are you talking about? You know, you can't just give people money. It's gotten a lot different. So I think that that's what I would say to people, is that, you know, it's offering you an opportunity to be part of a historic movement that is just definitely, you're on the right side of the
History.
of what's good. You know, you're on the right side of history with this thing. And I think that post-COVID, it takes on even more significance because, you know, from a sort of like the point of view of having been in lockdown, and even now we're not quite really finished with it, but having gone from, you know, being told that you have to like be at home and you have to kind of keep to yourself and all of that stuff, it makes getting out into the street and organizing and communicating about what the community needs more important than ever. And the symbolism is really, really powerful.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to hear some from Ms. Polly Spain, who's quite a formidable educator, as well as community activist, and hear from her about how UBI might impact young people and her perspective on how we can kind of push this forward. You're listening to Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
woman will sell her precious body for a small piece of paper. It carries a lot of weight. For that great almighty dollar. Talking about I don't know that money is the root of all evil. You funny thing, some people give me a nickel, brother. Can you spare that? Money can drive some people out of their mind. No good, no good, no good. Don't sell your soul for the money, no, no. Lay down, women will. Money is the root of all evil. Do funny things to some people. Give me a nickel, brother, can you spare that? Money can drive some people out of their mind. Got to have it, I really need it. Give it up, give it up, give it up, yeah. Got to have it. Some people really need it. Give me cash money. I need. Keep me living. How many things have I heard you say? Don't let money rule you. How many things have I heard you say? Don't let money fool you.
Okay, that was the OJs with another take on money and some of the ills associated therewith. This is Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3, and we're doing our special broadcast on unconditional basic income with my co-hosts Diana Blackwell and Polly Spain, and special guests Diane Pagen and Coach Brooks. I do want to hear a little bit from Polly now, as an educator, works with young people and in schools, and tell us a little bit about your take on UBI and where we are today.
Well, first of all, universal basic income in itself is very new as a concept to the average person. Even myself, I recently was introduced to it a few years ago, and prior to Yang, as a political entity promoting it, so it's a lot for everyone to digest. It's not as simple as, the words itself, universal basic income. What does that mean to the individual, right? And so in a simple definition, saying that, it's basically income that you receive with no strings attached, to break it down in lay terms, okay? And so, I was just looking at some of the feedback online, and, they're looking at the American Recovery Act with the 3 separate, I guess you would call them like stipends, distribution of money, during COVID. And they're saying that that's an introduction to UBI. So who's to say where we're going with this on a large scale? I mean, because if people get accustomed to receiving some kind of support from the government with no strings attached, then you have other political entities that feel like, people won't go back to work, basically, if they keep receiving, these stimulus handouts from the government. Now, the population, like I said, I deal with, they're like high school level between 17 to 24. I'm quite sure they would definitely, embrace universal basic income as a concept, because most of them in that age group are not earning money. It's very challenging for them right now economically to get jobs that are going to be able to cover their expenses here in New York City. I can't speak for the rest of the nation. Okay. So, I heard you talking about the march, Diane, which I think is great. But I do feel that as an educator, we need to start, within the school system to introduce economics, right? What does that mean? Because we have math classes, but we really don't have that many what I call financial literacy classes where, students are educated on what is money, how is it used, how did that system come about to be? So if we want to introduce universal basic income at this time, right? We would have to do it in a way that we meet everyone where they're at, right? In order for people to embrace that. And then two, the real stakeholders, the real decision makers, the power brokers, how are they going to accept it? Because one thing, when you were talking about the march, I wanted to know the elected officials in Washington Heights, because that's where 333 Broadway is located. How did they react to the march? What feedback did you get from them? So for me as an educator, when I want to introduce a new concept to my students, I definitely look at them and say, who am I speaking to? Who's my audience, right? And so my population who are, like I said, living in poverty and substandard conditions as it is, because a lot of them are in foster care, they're in homeless shelters, etc. All right. Yeah. So they would definitely need training and education on what it is, how to utilize that money that they're making or receive together, and, use it to invest in some kind of macro or micro economies, so that this way they can recycle it amongst themselves, maybe start up a business. So there's a whole lot of moving parts to UBI, right? And so these are some of the areas that I feel need to be dealt with before we just say, okay, here it is.
That's so important, Polly, the financial literacy and education piece, because you're right that they talk about money and economics sometimes in school, but very little to no education about money management. What is money? Where does it come from? How to use it? The fact that it is a tool, and how we can use it to do things other than just the obvious stuff. And so that is such an important fundamental piece that needs to go there. Diane, did you want to respond to some of Polly's questions?
Yeah, I'm completely there. Right, I'm right there with you. Kids, I'm calling them kids. I should call them young people. But our kids are being told that this economic system will work for them, and that is a huge lie. They're being told that if they do the same things that we did, or even that their grandparents did, that they will thrive. That is not the case. We need to, like Polly is saying, we need to give them the financial information that they need. And I would say, in addition to the idea of financial literacy, right? Because financial literacy is a positive thing. But really a lot of the financial literacy that we have now is meant to educate them into the current system that doesn't work for them. So I would say that Polly is absolutely, on the money, no pun intended, with the whole thing. But we need more so than just financial literacy. We need for them to understand that a component of financial literacy is understanding their right to have their basic human needs met, and the potential of universal basic income to make that happen for them, so that they're not in the situations that we find young people in now. And I want to you're making me think, and I'm so glad you brought it up. So the North American Basic Income Guarantee Group that does the annual Congress, which is every June. They're doing their Congress in June. And they're actually they just started, I'll send you the link. They just started they're doing an essay writing contest for high schoolers. And there's a cash prize for them to submit an essay about what an income stream like that, what would a UBI do for them, or what it would do for the world. So I'll send you that information, because it would be fantastic to have your students participate in that. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true. And I would say that as far as what happened after and during the 2019 March, we had a great community response. Predictably, we had my co-founder, James Felton Keith, was a politician at the time that we had it. He was running for Congress for that district. I think it was District 13.
Right, you're correct with Adrian. That's
yeah, exactly. As far as feedback, we got feedback. We didn't get feedback from community legislators. That was very predictable to me. I didn't expect them to be very responsive, because they don't tend to lead. They tend to wait and see who's getting in the pool,
right,
before they'll commit to anything. And so, we felt it was even despite maybe some politicians not getting on board, we did have aspirants to political office who will eventually, I do believe they will be politicians. We had Vonnie Newsom, we had James Felton Keith, we had more importantly, we had the community, the real people in the community, who were there, and we had 800 people. So they'll warm up to it, and already to your point about getting the support of leaders, the support of leaders often happens after, like I said, after they see who's getting in the pool. Michael Tubbs, who was the mayor of Stockton, California, and started the Stockton demonstration, when he did that, he was the only mayor in the United States that had gone on the record saying that he thought that a regular income stream, like a guaranteed income, would be something that we should be looking at nationally. Now there are 47 mayors that are part of the organization he started called Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. When he started it, it was just him. Within a month or two, there were 12 mayors. That was around, I can't say exactly, but it was around like 2019, early 2020 or so. Now it's up to 47. I went personally to a town in Virginia and spoke to the city manager of that town, and he's thinking about how to join. Newark, Ross Baraka just announced their pilot is taking off, I think on Monday. So we're gonna get the people we need. We have people in Congress, Rashida Tlaib, Tim Ryan, Ro Khanna. I hope I'm saying his name right. So there are people coming around. I get more excited about your students getting on board than I do about politicians getting on board, because I think that, they're going to follow, who the people want, what the people want. And then the only other thing I just want to add is that Santa Clara, California, is doing a guaranteed income pilot for a number of youth who are aging out of foster care.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. That's
Diane?
going to be a game changer.
Yeah, if you can send me that
Diane,
information, because I
I
could use
would
that as
like-
a study for my students.
Absolutely.
Diane, I would like to, Coach Brooks, we call him Coach Brooks, Elijah Brooks. Are you still on, Elijah? Coach?
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes,
he's
I am.
actually,
I
okay.
am.
I would like you to share, since she'd opened up the doors about the mayors for guaranteed income, would you share your story, which you shared with me the other day?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. In reading the article about guaranteed basic income and universal basic income, it seems that the basic difference between the two, if I was to say, is that one is targeted towards a certain piece of, because under the Newark policy, the Newark program, you have to be 200% below poverty level to even be eligible to be part of the program. But that's not the same with the universal basic program, or are they still the same?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's an essential point of discussion with when you're talking about UBI. So as a UBI activist and many UBI activists, we're very committed to the idea of universality, the idea that everyone in a community gets it, and that you don't make distinctions between who's making 25,000 a year and who's making 40,000 a year and who has 2 kids and who has 1 kid, because the universality is extremely important for a lot of reasons. For one, it brings people together and it creates a sense of community. Number 2, it eliminates bureaucracy, because if you have a benefit that goes to everyone, there's no means testing and there's no verifying whether they meet the requirements. So there's a really good reasons to have universality. That said, all of the pilots, the demonstrations and pilots that are going on now, including Newark, they tend to be targeted, and they have a value. To me, they have a value as in demonstrating the value of giving people money with no strings attached. They have a value, but it is true what you're pointing out is really interesting and true, and people talk about it a lot, which is that because say a city like Newark, right, they can't get the political will to give that cash payment to everyone in Newark. So what they do is they do want to solve a problem though, and they do want to collect data. And so what they do is they make a decision about who they're going to give it to, and it's usually based on income. And in the case that in that case they're making an income target, right? So if you're making more than that income target, you can't be part of that pilot. So it's not a genuine universal basic income because it's not universal. But there really is no, and Carl Widerquist, who's been involved in UBI research and teaching for a very long time, and recently came to the Basic Income March, he said that there's no such thing really as a UBI pilot, because the only way to truly test a universal basic income is to do a universal basic income. If you're doing a time limited program like Newark or Stockton, or like they're going to do in Richmond now, that has a targeting method like you're talking about, then you're not going to see all of the benefits of what a true universal basic income would be, because you're not giving it to everyone. So I'm not sure if that gives you all of the information that you wanted, but I'm really glad you brought it up, because the thing is that some people don't want to do pilots, because they say, well, you can do pilots like, here and there and everywhere, but you're not going to get all of the data you need to prove that doing it universally is really the best thing. And that's true. But I think what a lot of us feel, and you guys can tell me what you think, is that the pilot, even though it's not entirely universal, and of course that causes some degree of community dissatisfaction, I would say. I mean, I've been reading comments from Newark that are like, well, I think it should be more people should get it. I don't think it should be just, anyone that is that has to make that amount of money. I think that people who make, a little more than that should still get it. And I think that that's all true. But the value of the pilot is that this is what leadership wants to see. And if you don't do any pilots, you won't be able to get them on board. You have to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I think that, targeted pilots are necessary and imperfect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're just about out of time. Mr. Brooks, did that answer your question, or do you have another comment?
No, that's it. Yes, it makes sense to me. It's the same way when I brought it up to Ms. Blackwell, that they just wanted to get some data to see if by doing this pilot program and then seeing at the end of the program the progress that these people made, that they then could gather that information and use it to make it possibly universal from there.
Yes.
Well, I guess that's the idea. That's exactly what, to gather some data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes. And to get people used to the idea that oh, look, when you give people money, good stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, final comments from each of you, a minute or less. Polly, have any final comments for us?
Well, my comment is that I'm looking forward, again, as an educator, to doing the study, Diane, and I appreciate, you sharing your time and, doing such a lovely job as far as, clarifying issues when it comes to UBI. And I'm definitely going to take up your offer of working with my students to educate them on this new concept. Mm-hmm.
Diane, any final words for our audience?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, first.
Oh, Diane or Diana?
Diana, I was going to give Diana the last word. If we could hear from Diane first, Diana, if that's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Okay, very, very quick. I so appreciate coming on. I hope this is the beginning of something great. Thank you for having me. And everyone that listens to this, either on YouTube or on the radio, when you listen to it, please go to incomemovement.com, which is the marvelous organization that is leading up the planning for the Basic Income March, and so many more things, ways to get involved in the movement. So go to incomemovement.com, sign up to get emails, and have a read. There's lots of things that you can do, whether it be a march, whether it be participating in our weekly letter writing campaign to Congress, phone calls to Congress, There's a whole bunch of very fun stuff. There's something for everyone.
Okay, Miss Diana Blackwell, the final word.
Thank you. Even though I just met Diane, I am so happy to know that your position in this new movement, and it's not a new movement, but it is into this generation. I'm so happy that you're doing the work that you're doing. I'm very happy because I like to see the activism. I'm a activist in my community and I love the movement. So I'm very happy to know that you do the movement, not just the education, because I believe in the education, but we have to have some legs to what we've learned. So thank you for your work. I'm excited to know you and can't wait till we do our next movement.
Okay, great. This has been a great show. This is WHCR 90.3 FM, Community and Technology. This has been our UBI program with my co-hosts, Diana Blackwell and Polly Spain. Special guests, Diane Pagen and Elijah Brooks. Thank you all for participating. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Again, stay tuned next week, 5 to 6 p.m. at Community and Technology, right here on 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.